I'm pretty sure that I have ADHD. This is a self-diagnosis, but it explains so many things, which I will get into. But the past couple years, I had kind of wondered about ADHD. It was in the back of my mind, and I looked into it, just quick searches, surface level type stuff, and thought, okay, I don't have this. However, things just built up more and more, and I wondered more and more, and as I do, I got very obsessed with learning more about ADHD, and then the more I learned, the more I thought this could be me, and that led to kind of a breaking point where there was just a moment of clarity that was just like, okay, this is totally me, and it totally explains everything. And it has been an interesting realization in how it's affected me, because on the one side of things, it's very freeing. It gives a label, it gives language, it is very helpful. But I was surprised at some of the other things that came flooding in on the negative side, with shame and self-worth issues that have always been there. So I've gone through a lot emotionally, up and down, with this self-diagnosis, and it really wrecked me initially, because it came out of nowhere, seemingly. It just blindsided me. I'm 33 years old, and it took me that long to realize that I have ADHD. And so growing up, I heard the term ADD. That was more common than ADHD, and I didn't think much of it. The associations were that it was like the boy in class who couldn't sit still, couldn't focus on anything, couldn't get his work done, had way too much energy, bouncing off the walls, disruptive, that sort of connotation. So that, for most of my life, was what I kind of thought ADHD was, or just someone was like, squirrel, like there goes my train of thought, just all over the place, fractured attention. And so the reasons that I didn't think I had ADHD were because of that stereotype that I didn't fit, but mainly I have always kind of had low energy. It's annoying, quite frankly, but yeah, I don't have the hyper side of ADHD unless I get into binging on rabbit holes of information or whatever. I do have those extreme highs, but for the most part, I don't typically ever have energy. And I did well in school. That's the biggest thing. I thought if I did fine in school, then that meant I could focus fine. And of course I didn't have ADHD. And then the last really big thing for me is that I'm a highly organized person. I love organization. It lights me up. It's a passion. And typically people with ADHD are highly disorganized. They have issues with time, with being on time for things. And I like to get places early with ample time. And if I say I'm going to do something at a certain time, I'm there. I'm never late for things that I really commit to. And so those are the things that made me think, didn't make me think that I had ADHD. It prevented me from even looking into ADHD further. But yeah, the more I've looked into it lately, the more it just explains everything. So I'm going to get into those things. Rapid fire, because I have a list on my phone, because this is what I do. It's brain dump, and then that turns into more brain dump and more brain dump. So procrastination and leaving things to the last minute. I have always struggled with that. And, especially with school, again, I could do fine in school, and every time I would always finish my things, but every time I finished something, it was last minute. It was cramming. It was chaos. And every single time I told myself, okay, this can't happen again. This is not ideal. I don't want to pull an all-nighter. I don't want to leave this till the last minute. I'll work on it ahead of time. And then I never, ever could. So that's always been an issue. Clutter is everywhere for me. I have always had issues with keeping areas clean, and that's where the weird paradox is for me, because I'm highly organized for the things that matter to me. So if you were to go into my room, my office, open up a desk drawer, immaculately organized. Sectioned off, here's my camera gear drawer, here's my lenses in the drawer, here are all of my writing utensils in the drawer, organized, exactly what I need when I need it. It's beautiful. It's a system that I've created and I love it. However, to get to those drawers, you have to sidestep over piles of clutter. And for most of the time, clutter doesn't bother me. That is a thing where, some people can only work with, a clean desk, nothing on it, that gets them into a focused state. For me, clutter is welcome most of the time. It's rare when I'll hit a breaking point of maybe the rest of my life is so chaotic that I need complete order as much as possible in my physical space, and then I'll go on a cleaning binge and get everything spotless and my desk totally clear. But that lasts a day maybe, and then it's back to clutter. But in a workplace, I like the clutter. I think it does actually help me focus, because it distracts me just a little bit, just enough to keep my mind more focused and more attention. And I like creative things, and so the clutter to me promotes creativity and creative thinking, because it's all of these things in the background, it helps me. So I have an issue with clutter, but I'm also highly organized. So there's that. I'm highly sensitive, and I've always known this, and I've created ways to try to mitigate that. And emotional regulation has always been an issue, but one of the other problems with all of this is that I've had a 12-year journey with concussions and a neck injury and crazy emotional dysregulation and messed up hormones and just a messed up brain. So it basically has heightened everything, and I honestly don't fully remember what normal was for me in terms of some of these symptoms prior to 12 years ago. A lot has changed for me since then. I've grown up, matured slightly, so I do wonder how many of these symptoms are possibly new with concussion stuff, or if it's always been that way, or if concussion stuff just exacerbated it all. I don't know. But emotional regulation is something that I've always had an issue with, and being highly sensitive. So on that note, I do like planning and preparation, which again is another thing that's not really common with ADHD, as far as I can tell. Normally, you don't think ahead, you don't plan, you are good with spontaneity. I am not good with spontaneity. I like planning every single detail. I like to know everything ahead of time. And I think that ties into issues with emotional regulation and being highly sensitive. So if I can plan ahead every step of the way, what is going to happen? Okay, traveling. I'm going to have lists and lists and checklists and, get flights booked well in advance, get a bus to get to the airport well in advance, and reuse my checklist from previous travel trips and make sure everything is ready and I'm prepared for every kind of weather. Overpacking, because what if? Like, that's me. That's how I operate. Because why wouldn't you want to be prepared for things? To me, that's just common sense. That's just how I'm wired. But also, I think it plays into a coping mechanism, something that is necessary for me to try to mitigate dysregulation with my emotions. If I'm highly sensitive and little things that go wrong just destroy me emotionally and I can't cope, and my emotions are up and down and all over the place and it's chaos internally, why would I not try to take steps to prevent that from happening? So I do think that there's a lot of the planning, logistical side of things that is just me and how I'm wired and is beneficial and is smart. And then I do think there is kind of a negative side of it as well, where it's how I protect myself. So there's that. There's issues with motivation, even hygiene neglect, which I tend to do sometimes when my world gets out of control. And then there's starting all the things, having a million hobbies and interests and perpetually rotating through them. I thought that was not normal, but came across the term multi-potentialite and latched onto that label for many years. And I created, have fittingly not really created, what I call Anti-Niche Society, which was a side project idea that I had, which is a community for people who have too many interests. And I created some logos and branding around it, and it was cool. And I have the domain, antinichesociety.com, which I've had for many years, established in 2020, actually, and not actually established, but I have some shirts that say that on it. And so, I just lost my train of thought as well. Multiple interests, yeah. So multi-potentialite was this thing, and so I found this little area that I identified with of, oh man, there are other people like me who just have multiple interests. And now it seems very, very obvious that, like, maybe that's just ADHD, like maybe that's part of it, or maybe that's the whole thing. So always rotating through my many, many hobbies. Hyperfocus, which is a thing that I do, which to me, I never thought of as hyperfocus. I thought of it in a negative light, in the sense that I get obsessed with things. Like, I have to go down a rabbit hole. I have to get something out of my system. And it consumes me. And yeah, I thought that was just like a negative thing. And it can be definitely a negative thing and a frustrating thing. But it can also be a positive thing and very, very productive to be able to focus on something intensely and to learn as much as possible in a short amount of time. So there's that. I listen to audiobooks and audio content on 2 or 3 times speed because you can learn things so much faster that way, but also it engages my mind and it allows me to focus better than if it was on 1 time speed. Because if it's double speed, you have to be more engaged to take it all in. So for me, it is helpful and actually keeps me more engaged. It doesn't distract me. So that's a little tidbit. Forcing things. I have always hated forcing things. I have always felt that most things in life shouldn't be forced. I hate it. And again, there's a negative connotation that, that's just me wanting to do whatever I want. Like, that's not ideal. That's not how life works. But in reality, I think the forcing things ties into interrupting the emotional stability that I have. It risks me being dysregulated because I'm in an okay state, and then I have to force things, and then my emotions get involved, and I just don't like it. So forcing things, I think that ties in somehow. Also, getting frustrated when I get interrupted with things. This was something that, again, was a negative to me. It was selfish. It was, you can't think of another person when they come and politely ask you for something, or, hey, can you help me out with this? Can you do this now? And the frustration around that was like, they don't understand what they're asking me to sacrifice. And I didn't realize that until like today, but them interrupting is taking me out of a focused time period, out of a task that I'm doing, out of homeostasis, and then adding more distractible things into my life, where if focus is hard for me to get to, and then you interrupt that, then maybe I can't even get back into that thing. So that was another thing I thought of today. Having an addictive personality and impulse control issues, I make a lot of rules for myself, and I've had to do that over the years based on how I act. I know certain things I can't be trusted with, so I cut them out. My nutrition journey has been a lot of just cutting things out of my life. I know I can't be trusted with this food. Okay, I don't buy it ever. That's just a rule. Or I don't eat it ever. Some things I'm allowed to eat if they're elsewhere, but I'm not allowed to buy to keep in the house. Like a jar of peanut butter or something. That's a more recent one. A lot of the times I can have peanut butter and it's fine in a modest quantity. Other times it's just like, let's just keep eating this peanut butter and make ants on a log and have some fun, have some sugar, and it gets out of hand. So it's like I stopped buying jars of peanut butter, and I have so many food related rules and things that I just cut out because I know that I can't be trusted. And thankfully, I've never gotten into vices that are extremely addictive, drugs, alcohol, that sort of thing. I would hate to think what my life would look like if I had ever gotten into those things. I have literally never had alcohol in my life. And I, with all of these realizations, I am very, very glad that I haven't, because I can see how that would be a very, very slippery slope for me. So yeah, lots of impulse control issues that I just have to cut out things and avoid completely, because in the moment I can't control myself. So there's that. There's being a kinesthetic person. I've always loved working with my hands, and that makes sense so much more now because working with my hands slows down my mind. It allows me to engage and get immersed in what I'm doing, so my mind isn't all over the place. It again gives me that balance of system 1, system 2 in my brain, and allows me to focus. So yeah, it's like a natural way into flow and focus. I have always loved physical, tangible reminders of things and systems that I create, and that makes sense because if it's not there in my physical environment, it's not on my mind. I have way too many other things on my mind, and I have new ideas all the time, and so I like physical objects. Again, being kinesthetic, I like interacting with things with my hands, but also I'm very much out of sight, out of mind. So there's that. And then desire for efficiency and productivity is something that I've been obsessed with for a very long time. And I discovered a while ago that the end goal for me for efficiency and productivity was counterintuitively to not ever need productivity and efficiency. I wanted to solve all of the problems so that I could just exist and not have to have my mind going everywhere. So that ties in as well with the desire to not work, to not have a day job, or to work for myself. And it's not because I'm super lazy and work is something that I shouldn't have to do and I'm entitled or whatever. It's, I genuinely like working and getting things done, but I want to do that in a way that's conducive to me, and I haven't found that in a typical day job. So there's that aspect of it as well, and just, a desire for solitude, a desire for a simpler life, a more intentional life, being present, is because I don't have that by default with the responsibilities that I have, with how this world and society is for me. So I'm always longing for more solitude because I need so much solitude to balance all the chaos in my mind. And I'm also an introvert, so I do just like time to think and time to be by myself. That's how I recharge. But it's so necessary for me to balance things. And there was another thought there that I have lost. It was a good one. I wanted to talk about more solitude. I don't know. I lost it. That's frustrating. It was a good point too, but yeah, that's how my mind works. And I am becoming so much more aware of my tendencies, of how my mind does jump around from thing to thing, and like so much more than I realized. And other little quirks I've developed that help me focus or manage things, like when I'm going for a walk, listening to an audiobook. I started, I don't know how long ago, but I do this weird thing where I tap with my fingers. It's typically like middle fingers and thumbs, and then maybe rotating through the pointer fingers. I don't know how to do it when I'm not engaged in that, but it was something I developed that is subconsciously just a way for me to stay more focused on what I'm listening to. Like the walk and the audiobook and having to move my fingers, and then sometimes I have other thoughts in the back of my head, or like I've realized music, even though I can't really hear things in my head, the most recent song that I've heard is sometimes somehow playing in the back of my mind as well as I'm doing these 4 other things. So it's been extremely eye-opening. Like, it's been a paradigm shift into how I see myself and how I operate and how I see the world. Like, everything is through a different lens now, and it's insane. And even like the highs and lows of my emotions, like they've always been, an issue, but more so with concussion stuff and messed up hormones, and like it's always been all over the place, which is so frustrating. So I've always tried to find ways to manage that. And yesterday I had a good day, which was my first good day in 219 days because of an incredibly difficult stretch of working and doing too much for my already overstimulated brain. And hormones and everything just aligned perfectly so that I could have a good day. And that day involved an impromptu video in a new format that I just was experimenting with, which turned into an hour-long video and flow state. And I'm once again kind of back in the flow state, making a video here, even though when I started this, I didn't have much energy, but I feel a lot more engaged now as things have gone on. And from yesterday to today, like, there's been a lot of kind of talking myself down in terms of, even on the good days, even though the highs for me are very rare, when I get there, then I get so into that high and so obsessed, and I go too high and I go too fast. And that's another thing for me, was wanting to live a slower life. And I do have to talk myself down. I'm like, okay, let's not get too obsessed with this thing. Let's ease into it. Because, I did 2 days in a row of videos about my whiteboard. I got my whiteboard sitting over there still, conveniently just blocking the doorway to my office, because why would I put it away somewhere? So it's just sitting there still. But now I forgot why I was talking about my whiteboard. But because I made 2 videos on consecutive days, and then I was realizing that I could force things a little bit more with staying with an idea for longer, with fleshing out maybe a teaching video. So I wondered about, do I keep working on that? Do I use this as accountability and keep working on fleshing out that system? And do I do another whiteboard video today? And then it was like, okay, no, I think I need to not get too obsessed with this and bring myself down a notch. So it's always trying to regulate my emotions, and then just very draining as well with all of this stuff. It's so draining, and I don't normally have energy, so it's weird when I get into a flow state and when I get excited, then all of a sudden I have energy for the first time, but then it's like a crash coming back down. So I decided I was going to try to disconnect from that sort of thing, but then I was settled enough that I thought I would talk about ADHD, and then now I'm back into a 27-minute video when I thought this was going to be a quick one of just going through some generic categories on my phone. And now I'm tired again. So yeah, it's been a lifetime of trying to manage my emotions, my brain, my thoughts, and again, that plays into why I'm highly organized and why I like systems, is because it is the only way for me to manage everything that goes on in my head. I have to have external systems, because otherwise everything falls apart. And when everything falls apart, then everything keeps falling apart, and I spiral downwards, and emotional stuff takes over, and then it's like trying to once again crawl back out of that intense emotional experience. And so my life is just exhausting all the time. And it's not because of physical things that I exert myself with. It's the mental aspect of things, and trying to keep my emotions in check, and never having energy to begin with, and just so many things that I've struggled with my whole life. That's another aspect that was frustrating, was no one understands how hard I'm trying, or how much energy and time I've spent on, let's try to create a system. And then I get crushed if a system falls apart. If I've established something, especially around eating, I found, this certain food that I like. Okay, so I've got cans of tuna in olive oil. That's all that's there: tuna, olive oil, salt, clean ingredients, and I can have stacks of those in the cupboard. And so when I haven't had time to make a meal, I have something healthy, I have something portable. It's a system, and it works, and I love it, because it's one less detail that I have to worry about in my life, so I can try to manage everything else that goes on. And then the last 2 or 3 times I've gone to the grocery store, they don't have any. They have other kinds, but those kinds don't fit into my healthy habits, so they just don't have any. And so I have some still in the cupboard, because I like to plan ahead and prepare for things. So that's another thing. I stock up when I find a food or something I like in another area of my life. Man, talk about flow state and hyperfocus. Distracted, didn't even realize I talked for another half hour. So, man, where was I? I was talking about tuna. So yeah, I stock up on items that I find work for my system. And sometimes I haven't even really established the system, and I'll stock up on the thing and I'll think it'll solve all my problems. And then I'll realize that that's still another thing that I can't incorporate into my life because it's become dangerous in the other way. It's like, okay, I'm relying on this too much and I'm overdoing it. And so then I have to cut that new system out. And so, yeah, there are times where I will get so emotionally crushed if, like, you know, there's one thing to have something not in stock at the grocery store once or twice, which again for me is okay because I stock up and I plan ahead and prepare for that. But if it's like a product that I do have all the time that just stops being made or stops being in stock ever, then sometimes that can just trigger me to emotionally fall apart because that was a system that I had created that it was one area of my life that I could offload from my brain, have it somewhere else so I can deal with all of the other chaos. And so my struggle my whole life has felt like I'm perpetually behind with all of my ideas, with everything that goes on in my head, all of my to-dos. There's never enough time. And just with my nature, new ideas come so quickly. More ideas come than I can deal with. And so I am like literally perpetually behind mentally with everything. And so I just try to create systems to manage it all. And for most of my life, I thought that I kind of could get to a point where things were okay, where I could manage it all and I could do it all. And I don't know why it took me that long to figure out, like, you can't actually do it all, and you'll never create a robust enough system, a dynamic enough system to account for all of you. I still think I can improve on that quite a bit and get closer than I am now, but it's been a hard realization the last couple of years that I can't actually do it all. I'll never catch up with all the things that I want to do, with all of my interests, with all of the things I start. And so part of that has been forcing myself to learn to prioritize, to say that it's okay to be interested in all of these things, but it's not feasible to do them all at once. So embrace that. Set some things aside for a season. You're not cutting out a part of your life. That's another issue for me, is I felt for so long by neglecting different things. If they were neglected for too long, then it was like I couldn't tap into this part of who I am, which is part of me. I need all the parts. So I thought I had to, it was like ripping off parts of me when I need that to be whole. But I've come a long way with that, in being able to acknowledge I can't do it all and know that there are different seasons of life for different things. So like this past year, the past 10 months has been a season of work, of being an adult, of being burnt out and stressed and overwhelmed and working so hard. And not having free time and not getting to be myself. And I anticipated that that's probably what it would be like going into it. It was way harder than I thought it would be. There were a lot of things that made it much more challenging than I had anticipated. But going into that, I knew it was a different season. Last year was an amazing season of my life. It was the best season I've ever had, of a lot of time off, of being able to get myself back and my mind back and slow down and have solitude. And that's the other thing. Okay, that that thought that I forgot before, I gotta start before I forget it again. That solitude, oh, now the moment was like so important that like I lost it. Oh, okay, so I have figured out in my life things that I'm passionate about, that I love to do, that settle me, that calm me, that ground me. So last year, I got to do those things, and it was a year of feeling regulated overall. Like, there are always some setbacks for me with sports and other things, with neck issues, but in general, I lived a life where I felt I was regulated most of the time, and because of that, I got to feel like myself a lot of the time, or a lot more. And so that plays into, again, my struggle with having to have a day job, having to pay the bills. You know, it's not that I'm against working or that I'm lazy, it's that I know what helps me calm down. I know how to thrive. But I can't do that when I'm working 3 jobs and don't have free time and my mind is overwhelmed to begin with. So that's been the struggle of why I've longed for so long to just have time, to have time to myself, to be able to do hobbies in free time. Again, yeah, and I had this narrative like, that's way too ideal. Like, you can't just do that. Life isn't just easy. You don't just get to have fun all the time. You have to have responsibilities. And I get that. And again, I like responsibility. That's actually one thing that helps me to focus. If the stakes are high enough, then I can focus. Certain things that I wouldn't be able to focus on myself, but if I'm doing for another person, that sense of responsibility empowers me, and I am fully engaged because I want to do well for that person. So I like working hard, and I like responsibility, but just the way our society is, by default, is just not ideal circumstances for an introvert with ADHD. Ugh. So, yeah. And then it's like, the world doesn't understand. Like, so much of my issues too is like, man, if only people understood what I deal with and how hard things are and how hard I'm trying. And until now, I didn't even know I had ADHD, and I didn't know how much all these other factors were playing into things, and how much my entire life has been creating workarounds, creating accommodations for myself, trying to find ways that I can cope in a world that doesn't feel like it was made for me. So yeah, there's my flow state, hyperfocus, brain dump again on a vlog that I genuinely thought was going to be short. But yeah, it's like, okay, I have to get it all out of my system, and then I can settle down, and then I can move on. Because I'm always trying to get to that homeostasis, and I think that's part of why I get so obsessed with learning too, is that, again, I have this misguided idea that if I could just learn all of the things, then I would be okay. Then I could protect myself. Then I could mitigate all of these things, and I could just be okay. Because I have all the systems, I have all the workarounds, I understand myself, I understand others, I understand everything. If I understand everything, then I can be okay. And I'm also a type 5 Enneagram, which is obsessed with learning and figuring it all out. And again, there's a beauty in that and a purity to that, but then there's also the using it as protection, as a coping mechanism. So this is a glimpse into my brain on a pretty good day. Like, that's the thing too, is like, I had yesterday off, and the day before, and today. I finally am in a time where I can take some days off from work, and it's still just so exhausting. But it's exhausting when I have an abundance of time, when my mind can wander and can settle. So like, no wonder I can't survive well when I don't have an abundance of time. Yeah, I've always been wanting time in my life to do all the things, but not because of, like, not for the wrong reasons either. Like, that's the thing. All my life I thought it was, like, it seemed from the outside that I was doing things for the wrong reason. Not the wrong reasons. Like, I knew I was doing things for the right reasons, but like, just the way society is set up, it didn't feel like I was. It's like, yeah, if you don't want to work, that just means you're entitled and lazy. And like, yeah, my desire for time is so I can feel like myself, so I can be in an environment where I thrive, where I can come alive with different hobbies and interests, and I can just be okay emotionally and not be on an up and down roller coaster all day, every day. And there's so much of that's just like, this isn't my fault, which is so freeing, but also like, but the world's still not designed for me. So that's why I've always been trying to design it in a way that does work for me. But I'm not in control of the whole system. I'm only in control of a small part of it. Okay, I am getting tired. So I think I will wind this down. It's been a long time. Again, like, this is a glimpse into my mind on a good day when things have settled mentally. Like, this is at the bottom of the barrel here. Like, this is very low key. So yeah, I get so all over the place, and it's so hard. It's always been so hard, but I didn't know. Like I knew it was hard, but I didn't know all of these things that are working against me and the accommodations I've had to make for myself. It's just, yeah, again, a paradigm shift where like the discovery of ADHD has actually shattered my world, because it literally makes me see everything in a different light now, which is amazing. Like, I love discovery. I love ideas. So the breakthroughs are hard at times and emotional at times and make my brain go crazy at times. But then I can settle because I've understood the thing, and then I'm more equipped, and it's like, okay. If I could just understand all the things, then everything would be fine and even keeled. And yeah, that's not how life works. So if you're here still at this point in the video, again, I don't know why. This is just a rant, a brain dump, a discovery process. It is chaos, and I'm so exhausted now, but in a good way. Like, it's, yeah, I got what I came for. I've been able to get some things out of here and out there and just get a little more clarity and express things emotionally. So I don't want all my videos to just be like me having to get stuff out, just brain vomit. But yeah, I don't know what this really was or turned into, but maybe if you're wondering about ADHD, this might have some content that you can relate to. And if you do have ADHD and you've known for a while, I would love to hear your experiences, how much of this resonated with you, because again, this is just a self-diagnosis for me, and it's new, but of course I've gone deep already, even though it's new. So yeah, there's still a lot to figure out and navigate, and of course I will obsessively try to do so. But yeah, all right, I will actually stop talking now. But wow. But yeah,